Good morning, everyone. For those of you just coming in, Happy New Year. We're going to get started in just a minute to keep us on time. I heard that one of the classes finished a little bit later, so I'm sorry if you feel a little rushed, but I want to honor the panelist time and for the two panelists that are dialed in on Zoom. So one quick housekeeping note, we hope that you do ask some questions. This is your time with the panelists. And if you do ask the question, we'd love for you to come up to the microphone here, turn it on. And if you need help with that, I'll be there for you. And if we don't do that, then the panelists and the couple of the executive coaches that dialed in on Zoom won't be able to hear your question. And we want to make sure that that happens. All right. So why don't we go ahead and get started? So the agenda for today is just, I've been interacting with some of you in the cohorts and really enjoyed it. And I've heard from the coaches that there's still a lot of stress and angst with the news. I mean, how can there not be, not even just in the job market, just in general? And so I want to give a brief overview of some of the headlines that came out. And then we're going to jump right in and have the panelists introduce themselves to you. And then we're just going to jump right into a Q&A session. So how terrible with the small lettering, but essentially the job market, the numbers came out yesterday, and non-farm payrolls rose to 223,000, which was still a little bit of a disappointment. The December job report showed stronger than expected job gains, and a dip in the unemployment rate, but to an all-time low. However, the wage growth did moderate, continuing a pattern seen in recent months and probably some of the headwinds that you've heard about. So overall, Bloomberg News reports the report was mixed, offering signs that the labor market is still hot, but also providing clues that demand for workers is cooling. Wage growth also slowed and weekly working hours continue to decline, which shows slowing momentum. Job growth came from some of the same areas where we've seen strength, namely my alma mater, the leisure and hospitality, where employment is still down 5.5% from pre-pandemic levels. From LinkedIn News, they trend, for those of you that don't follow, they actually have 191 million members. And if you don't follow their news, they track a lot of the data that comes through on the employment side, and they have an employment report that comes out monthly. So this is from their December report, just published in January. Hiring grew in 13 of 19 industries in December, compared with 2 in November. But the tech, information, and media sector continued to lead declines, 4.9%. Since spring, tech hires have spiraled 37.7% lower. Probably no surprise to some of you in the room. And actually, I will have to say that I understand this has been, a couple of people in the room have been affected by these layoffs too. Nationally, across all industries, hiring increased 1.1% in December from LinkedIn News compared to November, the first monthly increase since August. However, hiring is down 10.3% year over year and down 9.4% from pre-COVID levels. So there's the positive. This is what we're hearing in the headlines. And then LinkedIn News also kind of just took a broad brush of what's been happening with some of these layoffs. It's not just happening in the tech and media space. It's happening just sort of as a result of what we've all been through. I think it's really interesting. Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, said that we're laying off 10% of our employee count, which is 80,000 team members. And he just admitted that, maybe we hired too many people during the pandemic, so we're just going to lay off 10%. And so that must be very difficult. I've been in these situations before where I've had to make these kind of decisions. And I've also been a part of when a CEO has to make these decisions. So I know that they're very difficult. And then here we are in this job market. You are all working so hard to get these degrees and doing so well. Many of you would like to pivot, move up in your organization, move out, move from the military into some sort of civilian role. And so I'm so excited to introduce our panelists today. Hugh, if you could turn on your mic and introduce yourself and give a little bit of background. Thank you.
Sure. Is this working? Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Hugh Ramlow. I am an executive recruiter with Korn Ferry, where I focus primarily on serving clients in professional services and tech, so consulting and IT services and software primarily. I work on a range of different roles, primarily at the C-suite level in PE-backed environments or in large corporates or private partnerships. I place partners into the big four, into the strategy firms, that kind of thing. I also lead a lot of our work in and around data and analytics services in particular. Got a master's degree in that space from Darden, and I went to Georgetown for undergrad, so it's fun to be back here. I live in Vienna and live with my wife and my wife's terrible small cat that I kind of like sometimes, but that's me.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. And we have Candy Tillman on Zoom. Candy, could you introduce yourself?
Of course. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I'm Candy Tillman. It's such a pleasure to be with you today. I run 50 Strong, which is a small startup. We're about 2 years old. We predominantly focus on ensuring that strong military talent that is transitioning out of the military, maybe through school, in case there's any of you out there, understand the pathways that are open today at strong military-ready employers. And so what we see is really, a group of really talented individuals, often with an education, that are often concerned, right? And we'll talk about this more. What I want you to know is there are many strong employers today that are currently seeking strong talent. And so that's relevant to you all, certainly. Great to be with you. I started my career at Procter & Gamble about 20 years ago, spent some time with Oracle and SAP and Henkel before starting my own consulting firm. And we work with many large employer partners. I'm a graduate of the University of Alabama, Roll Tide, and so happy to be with you. Thanks again.
Much, Candy. And Iris?
Turn this off?
Yes.
There you go. Hi, my name is Iris Zimmerman Garza. I've actually been in the recruiting world for about 20-ish years. So I've specifically been with managed services firms, staffing for IT, for technical. I've done that on Wall Street, as well as just small startups. So now I actually am a reverse recruiter, which is a very different role. I work for a company called Find My Profession, and I have clients that are not companies, they're actually individuals, individual human beings looking for a job. And that's what I do, is I help them look for a job instead of helping a company look for people. So, and I live here in the area. I've been here for a number of years.
Thank you so much. Somebody said, is Iris sort of like a buyer's broker, but for employment? Is that a similar?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I've heard a lot of different terms. Yeah, like for, I've heard a lot of different things, but I even said that when I looked at the job posting, I was like, what's a reverse recruiter?
Right. Yeah.
So now that's what I'm doing. But yes, all I do is really help an individual.
Great.
And I have a number, like about 5 clients that I work with, and I help them search for jobs and hopefully get network and get interviews for them and hopefully land them a job.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And when we move to the next panelist here, if you could just move your microphones up a little, we're not hearing so much on the Zoom. So if you could move them closer to you, that way everybody can hear you. Thank you. All right, Martine.
Hi, nice to meet everyone. Martine Vanin. I'm a principal with Heidrick & Strogels. I'm based out of our Washington, D.C. office, and I'm part of our global technology and services practice. In terms of my area of focus, broadly defined as B2B technology. It ranges from IT and tech-enabled business services to enterprise software and SaaS. Most of the work that I do tends to be either P&L, go-to-market, or operations leadership roles. That ranges in scale from Fortune 500 clients where we're helping them find senior P&L leaders to private equity-backed organizations where we're primarily helping them find CEOs, COOs, and chief revenue officers. As a sub-market focus of mine, I spend a lot of time in our government technology and government services space. So I work with a lot of companies based right here in our Washington, D.C. area, particularly in the Northern technology, in the Northern Virginia technology ecosystem. So I've been with Heidrick for 5.5 years. And did my undergrad here at Georgetown. I did a panel like this about a year and a half ago, where the topic was the Great Resignation. And it's interesting how sort of the headlines evolve and what concerns us day to day evolves as well. But as recruiters, we see a lot of it day in, day out, and we see, what's in the media, what's real, and what we're hearing from our clients. So hopefully, this can be an informative session for all of us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And Stephanie joining us on Zoom today. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. So I'm Stephanie Markich. I graduated from West Point in 1999, and I spent 6 years as a transportation officer in the Army. And then I decided to get out because I was a transportation officer. I decided, why not just go into logistics? So I found Procter & Gamble at a recruiting conference, and I've been there for over 17 years. I started in logistics, managed transportation back when we owned Pringles at our Pringles plant and our distribution network. Then I went into purchasing and I bought transportation for P&G. And then I've gone into consumer insights. So Candy, she said she started her career at P&G. She started in this exact space. And so my most recent role was in data and analytics. The company decided to take a leap and create a role for military recruiting for me because of my passion for helping folks transition from the military to find a job at P&G. But if it doesn't work out for P&G, I want them, to obviously put their best foot forward with other companies. So I really have a passion with working with our veterans and putting them in the right role and helping them find the right career, not just a job. And I'm excited to be here and answer any questions, people might have about making that transition or finding a job in corporate America. And obviously I can speak specifically about, Procter & Gamble and what I've seen in all my years of recruiting. So even though this role is dedicated for me now, since I started with the company, I was very impressed with their efforts at recruiting military folks. So I was part of our informal team for my entire career at P&G. So I've been attending conferences for years and working with veterans.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. It's great to have you. And Mike, if you could bring us home.
Absolutely. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Bruni. I am currently, I lead my own consultancy called Talent Acquisition Strategies. I think I'm probably now, the oldest here now because I've heard how long everyone's been in the business. I've been doing this almost 30 years across talent acquisition, across recruitment. So I touch on just about anything in the entire recruitment ecosystem, to include placement, to include advisory service to Fortune 500. I've had experience in the federal government as a government staffer, as well as, multi-industries from the insurance industry, the financial services industry. I've spent the majority of my career across the national security industry. So in addition to placement and doing recruiting, I also conduct career navigation, reverse recruiting, number of different services that I do provide for a number of clients. So I look forward to this session. Love coming to Georgetown. I think it's the first time I've been to McDonough in about 10 years, but I usually am over here at the Foreign Service and Security Studies. But I look forward to your questions and this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And I will have to say just a little bit of a story of how all of our panelists came together. And we talk a lot about the power of networking and having the confidence to reach out to people. I can tell you that Stephanie, I had basically cold called her on LinkedIn, introduced myself, said who I was, and that we have a great group of students that would be honored to hear her story and how she helps veterans transition. She responded on LinkedIn, I think probably the same day. And then she introduced me to Candy. So that's how we met. And so we've known each other for probably a couple of weeks. The same thing happened with Martine and Hugh. I reached out to them on LinkedIn and sent them a message and an ask. And it's always kind of, do you do the message, hello, I'm Denise, I work at Georgetown, or do you do the ask at the same time? And I decided to be bold because I had a quick deadline. I just started here in October 3rd. And I had a quick deadline with some time that program management's put together for the career services. And I looked at your survey, and these are the kind of people that you wanted to connect with. So I just decided to be bold with all the panelists, introduce myself, and I put the ask out there. They all responded either same day or with not even 24 hours later, would love to help. And then Iris and Mike came through a referral from somebody on our career services team at the Career Center. So it's just a quick story of sometimes if you don't ask, you don't get. And it's also a story of these talented professionals are here on a Saturday, and they're here to serve however they can for you. And if we didn't ask, then maybe, we wouldn't receive. So hopefully that gives you confidence. There are a lot of great people out there to want to help one another. So I'll jump right in, and I assembled some questions to get us started, but I think it's better when you ask the questions because you're in the situations that you're in with work. And I want to make sure that this is tailored for what you want to get out of it. Sound good? All right, great. So we're going to transition from the PowerPoint to just the panelists. And we do have a couple of our executive coaches that dialed in as well. All right. So Martine, you touched on it a little bit, and I wonder if you could expand. You talked to me as you were coming in anecdotally about one of the clients you talked to, but with all of what we're hearing on the news, is this a good time to pivot in your career?
Look, in my opinion, there's never a bad time to pivot in your career. There's obviously a lot of attention in the news around, some pretty visible companies, either hiring at a slower rate than they were doing, or, downsizing and making the tough decision to make reductions. And that obviously is going to get headlines and it's going to get a lot of attention. But, from where I sit in our technology and services practice, we work with, and name the brand, Salesforce, Google, AWS. We work with all of those companies, and they're still hiring, and they're still hiring across the organization. They're just probably being a bit more strategic around how they're doing it. So we just came off what probably was from the second half of 2020 until the first half of 2022, which was probably the most aggressive hiring market in tech in the last 20 years, where Amazon was breaking records every quarter for the number of people they were hiring. That wasn't going to last forever. And we're starting to see the effects of that, a lot of what we thought were, pandemic transformations were maybe just, transitory effects, and companies are having to rethink, how many of these employees do we actually need, and, making tough decisions. And it's not easy, but at the end of the day, there's still strategic needs across all of these organizations. And for everyone, anyone making a career pivot right now, just be very thoughtful and open-minded, because yes, are there less jobs in the market right now than there were maybe 6 months ago? No doubt, but good companies are still hiring, and they're hiring for talent. And I would just encourage everyone to keep an open mind around where the opportunity could be. Some of the best companies in the world were built during recessionary environments, where companies have to get lean and really thoughtful and strategic around how they grow and how they hire. So that is my point of view. I think it's reflective in what we're seeing in the market and what the requests we're getting from our clients. Again, we're not getting the same phone calls being like, we need 6 SVPs for next week, but we're still getting a number of calls around, hey, we do need an SVP for this department for this specific, transformative need that is going to be critical for us for the next 5 years. So that's my perspective. I would love to hear some of my fellow panelists.
I'm happy to dive in. I agree with really everything that Martine said there. And we're seeing the same thing, like in my practice, again, primarily working with consulting firms, IT services, and enterprise software. It is not the same kind of like incredibly hot market it was 9 months ago, where, we would place folks and there'd be like, they'd have 6 different offers from a bunch of different companies and then get a 90% raise in their base salary. Like that kind of thing is not happening, but that almost never happens. And I think companies are still hiring in a general sense. The market's still growing. It's just not growing as rapidly. And so there's a lot of bad news out there. And I think it's important to like pick your spots when you're thinking about where you want to go if you're going to make a move. But it's not a down market. And I almost think of like Korn Ferry and Heidrick and other recruiting firms I think of them as like an early bellwether for what the job market looks like in a general sense, right? Because like if our business is slowing down, that probably is an indicator of like where the talent market's going in a general sense. we're still growing really fast, and like our business is really strong going into next year. Like I'm struck by, I was talking to a senior partner at Deloitte in their consulting business yesterday, and we were talking about the same topic, and he was asking me what I'm seeing. I was asking him what he's seeing, and he basically said like, hey, you know, we are starting to batten down the hatches a little bit, but that's relative to growing, you know, 30 to 40% last year. You know, this upcoming year and the year after next, we're not going to grow at that rate, but double-digit growth in a $50 billion firm is still really impressive. And so, I don't know, I just encourage everyone. I think there's a lot of opportunities out there.
Do you want to go?
Yeah, I was going to actually call on Candy, and if you could share your insights as well.
So, you know, as we kind of started, yes, there are some companies, predominantly technology companies, that we're hearing news about. What I'm going to share is this. I can't keep up with employers that are looking for strong talent. And I hope for those of you in the program, that is maybe helpful news to hear. And I want to caveat that with one thing: they're looking for strong talent. And so sometimes this does require being extra proactive, being very clear on what you're looking to do, owning your follow-ups. And by the way, as I tell folks that are coming out of the military and making a huge work shift in their own journeys, the earlier and often that you can be engaging with employers and understanding about their business and what their needs are, the better you will be when the time comes for that interview. I hope that's helpful. That's what I'm seeing. Again, certainly softening in tech hiring, but so many employers are looking for strong talent today.
Thank you so much, Candy. And you know, there's one easy way to stay up with companies that you're interested in is follow them on LinkedIn. You get to see the latest news, promotions, things that they're going through. You understand their brand voice, so that when you get to the table and you're actually able to interview, you'll already have just this fresh information that's not just coming off a press release from the website. So Stephanie, could you share your insights as well?
Yes, thanks. So obviously we're Procter & Gamble. We make things. So people are going to continue to need toilet paper, diapers, toothpaste, all of those essential items. We're building a new plant in Phoenix. Construction starts this year. So that was recently announced. So knowing those things, people are going to continue to buy our products. And again, some of these things are my opinion and my years of dealing with recruiting. I think it's all in what you're looking for and what you're looking to do and what career path. And where I've seen a lot of people get burned is just chasing the dollars. So, hey, I want to make all this money. And obviously with huge risk comes reward, but then you can lose your job. So plenty of people, when the tech spike kind of happened these last few years, left P&G, and now all these people don't have jobs. And so just understanding, as I tell everyone, you really should be looking for that next career versus just like chasing the money. If you're looking, I think all things end up working out as you look at like work-life balance and all the things that end up mattering to you, and really doing your research, looking on LinkedIn, following the companies, understanding what's going on, what's happening there. And then I would also encourage folks, I think yesterday I saw a ton of people post, I just got laid off. I just got laid off. So continuing to use your network to find available opportunities. That's also, I mean, I have so many people that maybe they don't come and work for P&G, but then they send me their friend. They're like, hey, this person's a great fit. You know, they're tied to this city or they're looking to come to Cincinnati. Do you have anything for them? So networking is also key as you're looking to make that transition. And even maybe, you know, hey, you want to work at P&G. Maybe you know someone there. Reach out to that person, find out what they do, think and see if it's a great fit for you. But don't, you know, underestimate the power of your network and the people that you know as you're looking, you know, to pivot to that next career.
Thank you so much, ladies. Iris?
I got that. I hope I have that. So I've seen this happen before. So it doesn't shock me as much. The one thing that does surprise me is social media and being able to put out all of this bad news about 8,000 people and 15,000 people getting laid off. This has gone on for years, but we have information that's right there. So it hits you all at once. So it's cyclical. It happens. It has happened in the past, but no matter what, there's always still hiring going on. So you're probably not going to read if X company hired 1,000 people this past month. You're not going to read that, but you're going to hear if they had a reduction in force of 1,000 people. So understand that hiring is always going on. And I know it may feel a little bleak, but it's not. A lot of the reduction in force comes from redundancies. Several people, like you start to hire a great number of people, like what happened in the last few years. And then you realize there's redundancy. Someone's realizing it up there and they are saying, we've got 27 people doing the same job. So maybe we should try and cut that out and actually just make a few people do it or 1 or 2 people do it. And that's what happens right now in corporate America that is happening. I don't see it just in tech. I'm seeing it across the board. So, but I also know that there are a lot of jobs out there and that people are still hiring. So I don't want you to be too focused on the negative news. And like I said, I've seen this, it ebbs and flows, but hiring always continues.
Thank you so much. And before we move to Mike, so what I've heard is there are companies hiring, even Candy saying not being able to sort of keep up with this demand, which is really encouraging to hear, to reach out to your network and be clear on how people can help you, because there are so many great people. All of the people here, our panelists, really want to help. And 3, make sure the follow-ups are happening. So if I'm introducing you to someone, which I know all of you that I'm working with individually have reached out after I've made intros, and it's just been really fun to watch all of the connections happening. And that's really your due diligence. You're the ones, doing that. And that's really fantastic. So, and then to keep your self-confidence when it can seem so dark and gloomy. The reason I got out of the journalism business, which I was in college and journalism school, I'll get into the hotel business. You can probably figure it out if you've known me just for a couple of months. The news business was so negative. And we had mock interviews to go up into someone's son that passed away. And our mock interviews were we had to get the story first. So Denise, go out and interview the family and how are they feeling about their son passing away suddenly in an accident. So, okay, well, my dream was to be on the NFL field as the first woman commentator. And so I just thought, well, I'm just going to have to put that dream aside and move into something else. And I got into hotels. And so I encourage you to just really think about what you're passionate about and some of the things that you can live with and, maybe, stay true to yourself as you're exploring. So Mike, anything else you want to add to what we have heard so far?
Yeah, a lot of great points. Just a couple things to point out. Having worked in this business through 2 major economic downturns, the tech bomb, I should say, of 2000 and 2009, and that crash. Having worked in it, again, certainly there are gloomy times. I don't see it this time around. I see a little bit of a dip, and I personally don't think it's going to be as impactful as it was then. However, for each of you, make yourself recession proof. And let me tell you what I mean by that. It comes back to your own personal brand. You're going to have to carve out your own niche, whatever that might be, in your particular field, in your particular industry. I know it was talked about here. I think Candy had mentioned it. Focus on what you want to do, where you want to do it. Self-assessment, very important in really building your own brand. In whatever business, whatever profession, whatever career you pursue, or whatever you get yourself into, make yourself known in it. Social media, personal brand, very important today. Again, I've watched it. I've coached people through very bad economic environments. Today, yeah, there's a huge hit in the tech industry. Yes, we've overhired. I mean, I'm just going to give you an example. Amazon went from 800,000 in 2019 to 1.6 million today. All right. It should not come as a surprise that they are actually now laying people off. And a number of firms, Salesforce, Meta, we've seen a number of these. And the thing is, we as recruiters, we're the first ones to get hit. Okay. As soon as Meta pulled the plug, I mean, I probably had gotten a dozen calls that particular weekend. So understand that this is going to happen. It's happening now. It's going to happen again. All right. This is Topeka Valley market. That's just the way the economic system works. So one of the best things that you can do is really start to focus on yourself, build your brand, carve out your niche, and go that way. You have to stay on the top of the market as well. Stay on the crest of that wave, because it is going to shift and turn. Recruiting today, we change weekly. It used to, I used to actually brief boards once a quarter. I do it once a week sometimes. So understand that the market has changed, and COVID has really, really accelerated change out there just in general. So again, the market is different than it was in 2000 and 2009. You can rest assured it's going to change again as we go forward. The best thing you can do is carve out your niche, establish yourself in your industry and in your network.
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to start the next question with you since you went last.
Sure.
So I hear quite a few students and alumni that I work with will touch base with me and through our conversation say, can you make an e-introduction to a headhunter recruiter? And so for those that I do know that are in their niche, I'm happy to do that. But how does someone do that if they're just on their own and they want to connect with a headhunter recruiter or reverse recruiter? What advice do you give for our audience today?
Now, this answer, great question. This answer is going to come from a very extroverted individual, which I consider myself. Okay. If you knew me, you know, I'm not quiet, right? I don't, it's actually hard for me not to talk every time somebody's talking here, but I'm going to tell you, I give this advice often. Networking for me has made my career. Okay. I don't have a graduate degree. I didn't go to a big school. I'm actually from blue collar Philadelphia. Okay. The one thing that I actually will tell you that has gotten me far in my career is your ability to network and build business relationships. I'm sure you've been taught that here. It's taught in a lot of different curriculums, but it's actually executing it. How do you do that? How do you build a business network that you can actually leverage? Okay. So it does start with your ability, okay, to actually reach out on your own and connect with the right people. I'm going to go back to the research, the assessment, all of those things have to be done because you want to be efficient. Okay. You're in Washington, D.C. Some of you might know this area. You know, you can go to a networking event any hour of the day. Honestly, you can go breakfast, lunch, dinner, happy hour, right? You can go late night, right? Anytime. There's always a networking event here. So you could certainly spend a lot of time doing it. What you want to do is you want to become efficient. Okay. So develop the ability, I think today through social media, okay, in person, I know it's very uncomfortable if you're an introvert, if you're not used to that, but social media does give you a little bit of comfort, right? You can sit behind your computer, you can sit at your desk. Always reach out. I'll tell you right now, I'm working with someone right now who is extremely nervous about making an introduction on LinkedIn, okay? And this can go to any particular social platform because some platforms like LinkedIn, someone might be expecting it. They may not necessarily be expecting it on Twitter or Facebook or what have you. However, I'm going to tell you, reach out, make those introductions. Always give a value proposition. If you send me an invite, give me a reason why I should hit accept, okay? Well, I sat here, two people pinged me. Okay. Now, again, I'm going to accept as many people as possible. I know I'm getting pulled. I usually get the hook, but I will tell you, reach out, develop that confidence to reach out, but always provide a value proposition. Sorry to dominate the time, Denise.
Not dominating the time. That was great information. I love that people are pinging you. I set out a message that even if one of our panelists isn't in a field that you're interested in, maybe they know somebody that is. So really, I agree with you. My career was in sales and marketing, and believe it or not, I'm an introvert. And so, but I love networking and I love connecting people. And I really think that my career, some of the benefits that I've had is just from people that have been able to help me because I was clear on how they could help me. So thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for pinging the panelists. That's what we were hoping for. Stephanie, do you want to take that as well? Take that question.
So one thing that I always appreciate from folks is being genuine. So if you're reaching out and you want to connect or whatnot, really being who you are and genuine. And then this is my biggest pet peeve, and I actually had this conversation with someone yesterday. If you decide to take a job elsewhere or you do whatever, follow up and close the loop. You never know when you might run into that person again or need another job or need some other opportunity. Like I get a lot of messages sometimes, maybe I get behind or whatever, but I always try to make sure to have, that personal connection. And, I reach out, hey, congratulations, you were offered a job. And then the person never responds and they decline the offer. And honestly, it's just rude. If someone's going out of their way to help you and whatnot, at least show that common courtesy. Like, thank you, I decided not to take the role. I'm moving on. I think for me, I always want to know and understand as P&G what we can do better. Why didn't you take our offer? Was it money? Was it location? Did you want to do something else? I want to make my recruiting process the best it possibly can for available candidates. And so again, I kind of went on a little bit of a tangent here, but as folks are looking for a job, I think this is some great advice to come off genuine, close the loop, be a real person. Because I think also what matters when you talk to someone, you're looking for that connection, that relationship, and you want to help that person. If the person's a jerk to you, I'm going to tell you, you kind of go to the bottom of my pile. So just some things to keep in context as you're, looking to find that next role.
Great. Thank you so much for that advice. I appreciate it. And I know the students do as well. Thank you. So here I'm going to take a little bit of a different twist on the same question, but so how often do people reach out to you and say, hey, I'm in the market, I'm in a career transition, I'm trying to pivot, I'm trying to connect with people like yourself. How often does that happen? And what do you say?
Take that one. Every day. And this is what I would say. So it's really good to be proactive and reach out to recruiters. It's just helpful to you. It's going to benefit you in the long term of your career. At the end of the day, at least I can speak for myself. We represent our clients, right? And if we have a search that we're working on and you happen to fit the description of that search and job profile, excellent. There's value right away. Sometimes we won't have a position available immediately that might fit either what you're looking for or what makes sense for your background. So we might not be able to have that opportunity for you right away at that moment. What I would say is always treat those interactions from a long-term perspective. It has happened to me many times where I have a 20, 30-minute conversation with someone. I learn about their background, what they're looking for. I save my notes. I know this. I don't have something that's immediately available, but maybe 6 months from there, a year, even 2 years from then, I'll have the right opportunity. And it happens in both directions, both when I receive an outreach from an executive trying to make a change or when I'm reaching out to an executive. And I think others can comment on this, but there's nothing as satisfying as when you've tried someone multiple times. They're like, hey, I have a great job for you. And they're like, oh, I'm not interested. And you try them again since 6 months later. No, I'm not interested. But then maybe a year and a half later, you have the right job at the right time and you actually make the placement. That feels a lot better than if you just, sort of it was easy right away. So I would just say, again, follow up, be thoughtful. It's always great to be proactive. Don't get frustrated if maybe, you have one conversation and it takes, a couple of months before the right thing comes back to you. But again, just be, proactive, follow up, people have different approaches to the regularity. I would say, for the most part, every couple of months is probably okay. That's about, and 60 days or so is about as often as we're refreshing, the search load for most exec search firms. But yeah, I would say, always, put yourself out there, reach out, but be patient, don't get frustrated, and keep a long-term view of the relationships you're building.
Thank you.
A couple points I'd add is just, I think it's really, really important if you're going to reach out to people cold to do your research and be empathetic. And what I mean by that is like Martine, gets the same probably kind of outreach I get, like more than one a day. I get probably dozens of people on LinkedIn pinging me about, essentially looking for jobs, which is great. But if you read my LinkedIn, you can see exactly what I do in like the first 2 lines. I would say 80% of the people that reach out to me have no relevance to the type of work that I do. And so like I try to always respond to those and say, hey, I'll take your resume, I'll put it in our database. But I don't it wouldn't help you to talk to me because I do specific things. And if you spent 30 seconds to read my profile, you would see that, right? So like, I think it's important to put yourself in the shoes of the person you're reaching out to and say like, hey, how can I do something in this relationship that helps both sides, not just one side? And also like Google around a little bit, right? Like good at looking people up and understanding how companies work and what they do from a recruiting standpoint, so that when you're reaching out to people, you're being targeted about folks who can sort of mutually benefit each other with you and them.
Much. I want to change gears and ask the audience, does anyone have a question that you'd like to ask one of the panelists? Great. Feel free to come up to the microphone and I'll turn it on for you.
Hi, thanks so much for coming. My name is Meredith Hanley. I work at Georgetown, but I'm in EMBA 29. So I'm curious about the industries that you're seeing that are hiring the most MBAs right now.
Take it.
I would say, I mean, from an industry perspective, Meredith, I mean, it's across. Sure. I mean, just that I'm aware of. I mean, I'm certainly, everybody has something to contribute, but just, I mean, the big four are always, you know, the Bains of the world, the McKinseys of the world, the Deloittes of the world, Booz Allen, if you want a locally headquartered organization. I mean, they're just a few. The financial services industry across the board, the insurance industry, banking. I am very well aware that right now, folks with MBAs, graduate degrees, are in high demand in those organizations. Again, it's going to come back. Is it volume? Could be. But it's your positioning and your ability to actually market and brand yourself to those institutions, and, you know, pursuing individual, I'm going to keep coming back to the research piece. That's how you get a leg up in job search. The more you know about an organization, the more you know how to navigate it. And if you can get to the right people in those organizations, that's probably your best approach. And that's what you would like to do. It all, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to come back to networking every single time.
Candy, do you want to share your insights on that as well?
Yeah, I'll share my insights. And again, I mean, please keep in mind, I'm speaking from a place of predominantly employers looking for strong military talent. Many of those do have MBAs, by the way. But, you know, I'd really encourage folks to kind of think a little bit outside the box, maybe. As an example, companies like Johnson & Johnson and Wells Fargo, also companies like Lowe's and Fortune 100 John Deere and Fortune 100 Republic Services. I think they're Fortune 100. Sorry, I may be off on that. My point is, they're looking for strong talent. MBAs are strong talent, right? And so to the point that my fellow panelist was making about, like, how do you connect to the right people inside of the organization? Listen, I'm a huge fan of in-person networking events. In DC, phenomenal. I happen to live in Phoenix, which is the reason I'm not there, and we are very spread out. But there is a way to virtually and efficiently connect to so many people inside of so many amazing organizations. And listen, if you're not leveraging LinkedIn in a smart way, I know this was made earlier, but if you're not leveraging LinkedIn in a smart way, searching by employers, searching by business function, then you're missing out, right? Because you're able to do all that researching to build those connections in a genuine way now. You know, I'll say this, you all have more education than I do, right? I have one degree from a state school, and I grew up I'm a first generation college student. My mom is not an American citizen to this day. And everything that I have every role that I have ever gotten is because of building genuine relationships and then working my ass off. Sorry, I should not curse, but the reality is people want to help other people that are being proactive and putting their best foot forward.
Of that advice, I heard the person in the United States that lived the longest. She just passed away. She was 115 years old. Come on up. I'll be quiet in just a second. But you know what? They asked her, what were your keys to success of living 115 years? And she said, I worked my ass off. That's what she said. So thank you
Thank
for
you
that
for not
advice.
letting me be the only one with a product.
The other thing she said was she likes sweets, which that made me feel happy
Yes.
because who doesn't like sweets? And so
Yes.
the commentator said, I was looking for her to say something like, she had a martini or red wine, but she didn't go there at all. But she did say exactly what you said. So thanks for sharing. Go ahead. We have another great question. Hold on.
Perfect. All right. So as we've been talking, right, the complete nature of the job industry is shifting, right? So people who need operations, what they're looking for from those kind of operational leaders might be slightly different than what they were looking for 5 years ago. I know Martine mentioned business transformation, right? So a lot of the different companies are looking for transformation now. Stephanie mentioned manufacturing and some of the changes that are going on in those areas. Can you guys give us a bit of what type of portfolios are they looking for people being recruited to have? What are companies actually asking you to demonstrate when they pull you into a session?
So much. Great question. Who would like to take that?
I'm happy to dive in on that one. That's a great question. I think, the world has changed like an incredible amount over the last few years. And I think COVID kicked it off in many ways. And, I think what we see from our clients in terms of what the kind of trifecta of what they're looking for is in any given candidate. And this applies, I think, across really all industries, is they're looking for folks who obviously like understand how businesses operate, right? Like at the executive levels, that's key. You guys are getting MBAs, you have that one nailed, right? People want folks who understand people, right? So like that EQ element. And then the third one, I think, is really understanding how digital transformation, technology, and data are impacting the way businesses operate. So like it honestly, in some roles I work on, it's more technical, right? Like if you're placing a CTO, you need to understand, architecture about 7 layers deep in an organization. It's different if you're, working on like a transformation role or a P&L leader. But I think having an understanding of like where technology, data, and digital transformation is driving business outcomes is almost unanimously sought after in every single role I work on. So I think like figuring out a way to get a base level understanding of that is really important. Doesn't mean you have to be a coder, but I think like understanding the trade-offs between on-prem and cloud software systems as an example, like everyone wants folks who understand what that means for their business.
Did that help your question?
I was going to chime in from an employer standpoint. So Procter & Gamble, one thing is you're looking to get a job with companies, whether you're using a recruiter or looking at companies directly. I would say really understand who they're hiring. So for years, Procter & Gamble has been a promote from within company. The majority of what we hire are entry-level managers. So people will go to college, get an internship, come back and work for us full-time. I would say 60 to 70% of what we hire are undergrad and graduates. So we do hire MBAs to work in marketing, finance, some supply chain roles. So I think really understanding the company, the culture, and what you're looking to do and what they're looking for. So as I'm recruiting people for P&G from the military, I'm recruiting solely for leadership. We're going to bring you into P&G. We've been around. We're celebrating 185 years of existence this year. And so we're going to train you on the things that you need to learn at P&G. Now, this is different. Not, again, I'm speaking on my perspective. And the reason I chose P&G when I left the military was I could have a long-term career at the company and do a lot of different things. And as you saw by my introduction, I have. And the company is going to train you on those things. So we as a company are looking to hire people who want to come for a long-term career and stay with the company. And we're looking for that leadership, that self-starter, leading people, leading processes, leading teams, leading like everything. So that's, I think, a skill that probably most companies are looking for, and how well you can articulate in the interview process and really make your resume stand out and highlight and quantify those types of things. Now, there are roles where people are looking for specific skills. So as we look in, P&G, like our IT space, we are looking for specific data and analytic skills and qualifications. But I think really doing your research and figuring out what companies you want to work for and what things they're requiring would be a great help for you.
Thank you so much. Does that help? Great. Who else would like to ask a question? Great. Thank you.
All right. This is just a follow-up question to some of the comments that have been talked about. I think from an employment standpoint, it's gone more from a buyer's, market, I guess, if you're looking for a job, to now kind of a seller's market with a lot of the contraction in the economy. That being said, when you have employees or employees have certainly left jobs for either more lucrative opportunities or things maybe in the technology sector that were more sexy at the time, let's say it's crypto or something, and that fizzled out, and they come back to you, kind of the impression that was given was, it's some sort of ding on them. Is that always true? Or is it that person trying to just like realize the best opportunity for themselves at the time? And how is that kind of viewed? And then also from the standpoint of following up, if you don't take a position that's either posted or you've been working with a recruiter on, what is the onus on, the interviewee or job seeker to get you that feedback? I know it's personally nice, but at the same point, I think a lot of job seekers have experienced the experience of recruiters not following up when they take another candidate. So who is the onus on? And maybe you guys could speak to that.
Mind if I chime in there just on that?
Great question.
And it's kind of like a multi-part. It is a great question. First off, I wouldn't go as, this is my opinion, I wouldn't go as far as to say that it is a full seller's market. We're still at a 3.7% unemployment rate. You are seeing figures of layoff. Understand, they are still employing people at a higher volume than pre-COVID, right? So again, I look at the economy as a good night out. You're going to have a hangover the next day, right? Same thing. It's the way I've always looked at the economy. If you're living large, right, eventually you got to come down off that high. Unfortunately, that's just the way the economy works. I'm not ready to say that it's a seller's market officially. Going back to what you had mentioned there, hiring has evolved over the years, and it continues to evolve, as I mentioned, at a very, very quick pace. So when you do, people today, I mean, what's the average stay in a job in the private sector in the DC area? It's about 2 years, 7 months, right in that ballpark. 20, 30 years ago, you wouldn't gotten hired anywhere with that. Why? Because it was an employer market for a very long time. That switched the last decade, right? Whereas most folks that are looking for careers, they really drive. And to this day, I'm still a believer, and I'm a recruiter. Believe me, the frustrations are there. So employers are coming with a different mindset today. We're not there. My point is, what may not necessarily have even been looked at in the past is starting to be given consideration. Things are changing. We're bringing science to the workforce. There's a lot of things that we're doing today and we are considering that we didn't do years ago, right? Soft skills, competencies, maybe we'll talk about that here during this session. My point is, the environment, the mindset is changing. And I know that that's kind of, sort of pie in the sky answer, but I guess what I'm trying to get at, just because you shifted and tried something is probably not going to hurt you in this market like it did in the past. So I'd say to your point about recruiters, huge problem. Huge problem in recruiting today is the lack of communication that recruiters are going to give you. And I'm going to tell all of you that is probably going to happen. I don't like saying that. It is probably going to happen. That being said, it is still the onus, I think, falls to you to follow up, right? Really follow up, see if you can get that response, see if you can get that feedback, if you will. And it really comes down to organization to organization. Some organizations are going to have a culture and an engagement that's going to be better than others. That's ultimately for you to decide who you are going to choose to work with and engage with. That's why I know I kind of hopped around there, and I apologize, I'm dominating the time, but I'll give it back.
Does someone else want to chime in as well?
I'll give an example around the comment you made around, maybe judging or, holding, taking a risk on what could have looked like a more attractive opportunity that didn't pan out. We see it a lot, and it's ultimately going to vary on the company and the hiring manager. But at the end of the day, look, I'll give an example we've been dealing with a lot in my sector, which is, I think most of us remember the SPAC frenzy of, second half of 20, first half of 21. And there's a lot of really great companies that went public via SPAC that maybe went public a bit prematurely, but are caught up in that sort of noise around, all the companies that went public via SPAC were, maybe not the best companies. So we've been coaching both our clients and our candidates through how to articulate the experience as long as you have data and as long as you can speak around what you were able to drive at that company, whether ultimately it was successful or not. I think learning to speak about it intelligently and honestly is always going to play to your favor. And a good recruiter is able to help see their clients beyond, oh, I see a brand on a resume that I don't like. And, for that reason, I'm going to pass on this candidate. That's just not really taking a holistic view at a candidate, not taking a holistic view at an opportunity. So as long as you can tell the story around the decision that you made and, what you were able to drive in whatever role you had, whether the company or not was successful, I think that's always going to be valued. And I'll echo, what was just said around, the follow-up. At the end of the day, it's on both parties, right? You can't just deflect the blame on one or the other, and it's going to happen, and it's terrible that it happens, but sometimes recruiters are in the awkward position where they're playing air cover for their clients, where it's a company that is maybe not giving you the feedback as fast as you want to, and it ends up in a bad situation, and it shouldn't happen. But look, if you're working with a good recruiter, they're eventually going to follow up. It might take a little bit longer than you would like for it to do, and just be patient. And I think if we can both give each other grace as recruiters and as execs trying to make a move on both sides, no one is ever as bad or as good as they would like to be on any given day. So again, it's going to happen on both sides. And I think giving each other grace is important, particularly as we enter the new side of the market.
I think it's really important to understand, because I don't want to throw recruiters under the bus, because they tend to get bombarded with hundreds and hundreds of resumes, messages, emails, and LinkedIn messages. So I just want to let you all know that for every one recruiter that you're like, why aren't they contacting me back? They may have several hundred individuals to contact back. And they may not have the bandwidth to do it at that point in time. So just understand they are people too. Yes, we recruiters are people too. And again, sometimes just have so much on their plate that it is really difficult. If you've sent your information in, you've applied for a position and you say, hey, where am I? That's great. But networking, again, will assist you with that. And I say LinkedIn is a fabulous tool. And if you're not utilizing it to, it's to the full advantage, you definitely should be. And you can look for some other people, maybe try and find the hiring manager in that company and just say, hey, I applied. Hi, nice to meet you. Send a message. A LinkedIn messaging has 250 characters. That's free. You don't have to pay for that. So you've got 250 characters to say, hi, I applied for this. It's nice, great to meet you. I applied for X role. I'm really interested and would love to talk to you. How about my resume or maybe a call? Boom. And hope to hear back something maybe from someone else within the firm. So don't just leave it at that one recruiter. Work on your networking and, try and make more connections within that company, because that will assist you. It really will.
Thank you so much, everyone. I do have a quick example, and then I'll go to the next question. So one of my 4 stepdaughters had interviewed. She got pretty deep in rounds at a company out in the West Coast, and the recruiter called her and said that she did not get the opportunity. So she was really disappointed, reached out to me on text, and I said, connect back with the person and thank her for her help and support through the process. And then ask her for 2 things. When she has the time, feedback on your what went well and what didn't go well. And if you get a chance for the third, anything that I need to tweak on my resume. And so she reached out, she didn't hear anything back. And she said, I'm really disappointed I made it this far. And I said, go ahead and give this person another reach out, give it a few weeks, but you definitely need to do it. So she reached out and she got great feedback. The recruiter said I was really busy, I was traveling, et cetera. We were working with this candidate for the role that you applied and others. But here's how I view you at this company. Here's all the so she said it was just, she spent 20 minutes with her on the phone and she didn't think that was going to happen. So like you said, sometimes people are busy, but then also sometimes we just have to be gracefully persistent and grateful for the time.
So I have one question. You guys see a ton of talent, you see a ton of resumes. How do you cut through the noise? Like on our end, this is a room of talented people. I'm sure we have a lot of comparables, but what are some examples of times that people have really cut through all of the noise and caught your attention in a way that's unexpected, which I feel like is hard to do?
Analysts on Zoom, were you able to hear that question? Okay, great. Anybody like to respond?
I always can respond if I'll just, so this is my personal opinion. Okay. How do we cut through the noise? Great question. The worst document ever created was a resume. I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you, because and this is an honest answer, at least from my perspective. And this is 25 years of doing this. But I think we're starting to finally get away with this. Getting away from this, I should say. Unfortunately, most employers will look at a particular education, a school, or some type of experience, right? And that's all good and fine, and that certainly should be considered. But that's typically how the average recruiter or hiring authority is going to cut through the noise, right? We're trying to do it with artificial intelligence, machine learning, with mixed success. Don't buy into the hype. It's not there yet. I think ultimately we probably will find a viable technical solution that will help us rack and stack. Problem is there's all kinds of biases thrown into any kind of review. You put a human in charge of anything, that's going to happen, right? So again, my point in saying all of that is, how do you cut through the noise as the person, the career seeker? That's where the engagement comes in. That's where you have to be efficient. That's where you have to be targeted. You have to know yourself. Self-awareness is key anywhere you go. I don't think we've mentioned that yet. If you are self-aware, that can take you far. My point in saying that is, what are you good at? Meaning, I'm not talking about you're not, coding, or writing a line of code. I'm talking about what skills, competencies do you individually possess? Do you feel that you're a curious person? Do you feel that you're adaptable? Do you feel that you're empathetic? All of those, right? I know people look at that and it's hard to see that on a resume. My point in all saying that is, get in front of someone. My mentor years ago always told me, and I still live to it, I live by this to this day, get your body in front of somebody before your resume. And I'm telling you, I've done that. It's paid off for me, because I can tell you just from experience, there are people that I have met and have never looked at their resume. And I'll tell you, if I did look at their resume, I probably would have never considered you. So again, listen to that and balance that. There has to be a natural balance there. So don't put all of your investment into your resume or your CV or bio. There has to be a multi-pronged approach to your career. Does that make sense?
Is my voice. Have a clear goal. It's really difficult when you get a resume for a position and you're looking at the resume and you're doing that glance and you're looking for specific things that they've done in their most recent job. What are they doing? What are you doing? What are your skills? What is it that you want to do? So if these goals are really not defined in your resume, it makes it really difficult for the recruiter to say, where does this person fit? So if you're not sure, the recruiter's probably not going to be sure either. And they may say, you might be good for this, or you might be good for this, but you want to be able to really have some defined goals and skills and really make that a point far up in your resume.
Thank you. Martine?
Quick follow-up to that, yeah, the language that you use actually ends up mattering more than you would like it to. And I'll give two very quick examples. For the field of AI ML, the unit within Accenture that covers that capability is called applied intelligence. IBM calls it cognitive. And it's the same thing, but two companies call it differently. So learning to identify how a company's talking about their capabilities and layering some of that language into your resume will actually help you out. It takes an extra step. It takes reviewing the job posting. It takes looking through the website and seeing the language that they're using. But if you're really targeted and you want to get an opportunity with a specific employer, going that extra step is going to help you. And the one caveat I'll add to all of that is I think the way we're to point made earlier, the way we're thinking about getting jobs is changing from just your traditional resume. I was on a call with the chief revenue officer of Databricks this fall where he was like, I don't ever want to see a resume again. That's a thing from the 20th century. Just send me LinkedIn links. So I don't know that everyone is there yet, but just think more holistically around how you're branding yourself beyond just a resume.
That's great. Thank you so much. Another question? Great.
First of all, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. It's a great session. I have a question about being recession proof, as Mike said. And just a few days back, I had a conversation with my career coach. I was thinking that my interest lies in merger and acquisition. And he had something really interesting to say about recession. He said that with recession, approaching recession, there might not be so many merger and acquisition deals happening, and also the opportunities. So when we talk about building our own personality and our own role in a way, what we are good at the same time, we also have to make sure that we are recession proof. How is it that we bridge these two things and be more conscious and make our stand really clear and be an appealing candidate to recruiters and employers?
For any Candy or Stephanie, if you heard the question, would either of you like to respond?
Stephanie, as
yes.
an employer, please.
Yes. So, and definitely follow up if it has, I'm looking at this question. So from like a mergers and acquisitions standpoint, so like my question is more trying to understand, is your question specific to mergers and acquisitions or recession proof? Because as I think about me as an employer answering the question like, hey, this is the job you want to do, looking at the economies, those kind of things, P&G, mergers and acquisitions is done, a lot of the work is done in-house. So it's, you know, finding a company that you want to work for that's going to be around. So I'll take a step back. I got out of the Army in 2005. And as I was making my decision to start my next career, I looked at all the companies and tried to decide like, okay, is this company going to be around? Am I going to have a long-term future with this company? So as you look at yourself and the skills that you want to build, one, look at the companies and say, hey, is this company going to be around? Or are they going to disappear? Ironically, the job that I have now and all the jobs that I was offered in addition to this, all of those went away. This is the one company and role that's still standing. And I'm glad that I chose it and happy with that. As far as looking at skills and being recession proof, I would say you need to continue to be learning and continuing to grow. So P&G over the last, I would say really 5+ years, we've invested in our data and analytics space. So we as a company took media buying in-house. As one of the largest purchasers of media in the United States, that was huge. So we now are buying, managing, and doing all the work that we relied on agencies to do. So as you think about what you want to go doing forward, if that makes sense, actually, make sure that you continue to grow and build your skills for that space. So within P&G and our company, we've really looked at people who are out there getting degrees in data and analytics and what type of skills and things that they bring to the table. So as you're trying to think, you know, how do I better myself, try and look and see where trends are going. And hey, do you need additional education for that? Can you just take some courses online? Can you build these skills and really work on that as selling yourself towards employers?
Thank you so much. Anyone else on the panel want to respond?
Say with M&A in particular, since that's kind of the context of the question, like it's certainly true that in a down market, like you're going to see less M&A activity on the part of corporate development teams in large corporations. But at the same time, like that's balanced by private equity firms going out there and being much more acquisitive, right? So like I think M&A is always going to be a big part of the strategy of a lot of companies going forward. It's a narrow space. Like if you think about the teams that do M&A within companies, way smaller on average than your marketing team or your sales team. And so it leads to like a really kind of small group of people that have experience doing that. And it's a highly valued skill set, which I think leads into like a little bit of a more general point, which is that when you think about making a career transition or going and taking a new job, I honestly think that even more important than the role, responsibilities, compensation, the brand of the organization is really like the leader and the team that you're going to go work with. Because if you can develop a relationship in M&A at Procter & Gamble or wherever with a really, really high quality leader, you're creating a recession-proof environment because you know that that individual is good at what they do. And even if this whole team gets laid off, that person's going to land on their feet and knows me as a valuable person. So I think you like want to make yourself valuable to valuable people. And then I guess the final thing I'd say, just in the context again of M&A, is like I think of that as a subcategory of non-traditional growth. And so like if you're interested in being a part of a function that does non-traditional growth, you may also want to think about like, hey, what are the adjacencies to actually, acquiring companies? And that might be like alliance partnerships right now has grown exponentially and become a much more important function to a lot of companies, which is different than traditional sales, of course, right? So like I would say there's a lot of ways to think about adjacencies that are probably interesting and also not that different from the space that you're trying to understand. So anyway, just a couple of thoughts.
Thank you so much. Another question?
Yes, I had a compensation question. I know that, we don't want to spend too much time sort of looking at jobs that are maybe not necessarily competitive when it comes to the salary that we're looking for, but just best practices when it comes to trying to screen out certain jobs. Do recruiters always get the dollar amount figure that the companies are expected to pay? And what's best practices as we go through that process, not to spend too much time to look at a job that all of a sudden you find, although it's listed as competitive in the salary, that it's not quite what you're looking for?
Yeah, anyone can
Jump
take
into
it.
that. Okay, great question. I mean, I think the first thing is like, I would think about it from like, what is your position in considering a job from the first part, right? So like, if you're relatively happy where you are and you're not necessarily like going to look to make a change, but maybe a recruiter reaches out to you about a job, and so you're coming from like a position of sort of strength, right? Where you're like, I'm happy where I am. I don't need to make a change. So I need to be compelled. Then I always, when folks reach out to me, I always just ask the recruiter, like, what's the range? Like, what are you thinking for this? And then it screens out a bunch of opportunities that aren't going to be compelling. I would, if you're coming from a position where you're like, hey, I'm for whatever reason, maybe I lost my job, or I'm in a place where I hate my job, I don't want to be a part of this, I want to go do something else. You might not want to take that perspective, because again, I think like compensation is, in my mind, a little bit more about like longer term ability than it is about like where you come in at. So like if you come into a position with, like, as an example, like say you go join McKinsey. I know a lot of folks who join McKinsey and take a pay cut to do so, because they know that McKinsey is a culture where like in 2 years you're going to get promoted or you're going to get kicked out of the org. So if you think you're really good, you're going to like move up the ranks and you're going to make a ton of money in the long term. So I think it just gets back to like approaching it with a mindset of like, hey, what am I trying to accomplish in the longer term? Not necessarily like, what does the salary look like up front? And then just, I guess, a final point would be that you asked, like, do we as recruiters always know what the job pays? No, we don't. And part of the reason for that is because particularly as you get more senior in an organization, there's certainly compensation bands, but they're pretty wide and they're not unified. And so like there's a lot of times there's a budget for a job, but if you've got like a very empowered leader within an organization, they can stretch those things. And so like it leads into like you will get a stronger offer if you come in stronger, right? So like if you have a more attractive profile for a position and you negotiate well at the end of the process, like that's not going to be the same as like what you ask the recruiter the job pays at the beginning, if that makes sense. So like there's a lot of like gray area and flexibility in these things and the way they actually work out in any given case.
So when I look at compensation, I want to make sure that everyone's, at least in my salary is one component of compensation. And typically when we're talking compensation, but when you do that self-assessment that I mentioned, this is a big part. What do you consider compensation? So somebody might take a salary to do something. In that case, McKinsey is offering a longer term investment. Now, maybe financially you can do that, maybe you can't. But that's where you have to actually do self-assessment, establish what is important to me now, what is going to be important to me in the future. I have seen people do commute as part of compensation. Can you take pay cuts because they don't work from home? Benefits factor. How much am I paying pre-tax for my Blue Cross here, and this company's doing that? All of those things can roll up to compensation. I think what you're looking at a base salary, and that's what you're determining what is important to you, right, for the compensation. And different organizations are going to, some can get creative, some may not, right? And that's your choice. So when you look at salary, who is paying competitive salary in that particular market? Just remember the three criteria: experience, education, job. There are three. Kind of get thrown in a little confusion there with remote work that's still being hashed out in the market about, hey, if I'm working remote in New York, can I still get to New York? Well, those types of things. But focus on those three from a base salary perspective. You really have to focus. And you want to look at the job that's commensurate with your experience. That's really where I see the disconnect. Someone with 5 years of experience going to something higher, or vice versa. You know what I mean? So it's commensurate. Plus, how in demand is your skill set? It's a supply demand, right? There are people right now at Amazon who are specialized in a particular type of technology that might be coming out of school making a ton of money. Why? Supply demand. There's not much there. So if many companies are going to throw more dollars at them from a salary perspective, again, the problem today is it's very hard to keep it. It really is. It's very hard to, especially the niche skill set, very difficult to keep. I hope that was helpful.
Yes, one quick maybe point of advice to add is when you're considering like a compensation package, I agree, lots of components to that. Base is often the most important, not always, but a lot of times at more senior positions, there's going to be like a bonus percentage on the base. A really smart question to ask that almost no one asks is, how has that historically paid out, right? Because like it's a target, you may have like a $100,000 base salary with a 20% bonus target. But if that's like I'll use a random, like IBM historically underfunds their bonus pool every year. So they know like the people paying those bonuses know they're not going to pay you the whole thing. You're getting like 70% of that. So it's just a good question to ask.
To further problematize that, the other element that you want to be thoughtful about, particularly something we deal a lot with in the tech sector, is just equity, right? Am I going to get a chance at that equity pool in this role? How do I value that equity? What are the projections that say the investors are making for that to actually pay out? Once you start getting into more senior roles where you have a chance at equity pools, how you value that versus cash compensation can be very challenging. And that's actually something where recruiters can play a meaningful role. I do a lot of work recruiting people from publicly traded companies into private equity backed situations. And it always requires sitting down, walking through spreadsheets, looking at your potential earnings over a 5-year timeline, and how does the apples to oranges comparison ultimately work out? So those are things to be thoughtful about. The last very tactical comment I will make is, look, you never have to disclose what your current salary is to a recruiter. But if you want to share, hey, this is what, generally speaking, if I were to make a move, my compensation expectations would be in this range. Look, we never know for sure, and it's very true, where a final offer is going to land, because we see all the time clients become enamored with a particular person and they break the compensation model, but that doesn't always happen. But we at least directionally know, given what we see in the market, hey, you're probably not going to get this in this position. Or, sometimes a recruiter could tell you, hey, you're a bit under market given your experience and what you've done. You should be really thoughtful about that, because I think there's multiple opportunities where you could probably, get some. So again, never feel like you're forced to disclose. People have different philosophies on this. I never like to put a candidate in a position where they feel like they're against a wall. But again, at the end of the day, recruiters want to do what's right for you, and they want to get an attractive and value-added compensation package to you. So if you talk about, compensation expectations, that sort of decreases the situation and the tension, and it helps you get to where you need to get.
I actually have one thing to add as an employer. So every company operates differently. P&G has an algorithm to figure out your salary, and it's not always negotiable. So make sure that you understand those things, whether you're working with a recruiter or not. And one thing that I spend a lot of time trying to inform folks, because I deal with transitioning military, where everyone knows your salary and all your benefits are free. Not the case when you come to corporate America. And I try to also tell people all about, to whoever made the point, it's not just your base salary, it's the raise, it's the whole compensation package. So, what do vacation days look like? When you're coming from the military, you have 30 days a year. Okay, not the same thing. Like P&G, we have 12 paid holidays and you get 2 to 3 weeks starting off. We give money for, so some of the other things is people look at like the total compensation. Well, you want to have children. Well, what do the time off benefits are? Oh, paternity, you get 8 weeks. That's awesome. Oh, we pay for IVF. We pay for adoption. We give you time off. So as you're making decisions and looking at compensation, really look at all the benefits, the relocation, just so many things that really factor into where you're at in your life that are going to help you make that decision. As well as, I always tell people this from the military, in some cases, you might have to take a step back to propel yourself forward. You're brand new to the company. The company's taking a risk on you, bringing you in at whatever level. And to just give you a bunch of money when you may or may not be, they don't know how it's going to work out, but that doesn't limit your future success. So a lot of times when we're bringing people in and we literally cannot pay them more than they're asking, we have a conversation with them. Well, here, this is the future career path at P&G. We're hiring you for a career. You're going to do this for X, Y, and Z. And this is the trajectory of your bonus. And for P&G, we still have profit sharing. We're one of the few companies that still has a retirement plan. So having these full-on discussions with folks and just being honest and knowing what you're really going to take. If a company's 50 grand off from what you want and you can't make it work, just be honest. But I guess that's my whole kind of thing here always. Be honest and set realistic expectations and just have that good dialogue.
Thank you so much. We're coming close to the end of the session, just a few minutes away. Is there any other burning question that someone has? Great. Come on up, Devin.
Hi, Devin Zeidelman. Thank you all so much for being here. As you know, many of us come in with different goals with an executive education or MBA. And I want to go back to Denise's point about career pivoting. So in your experiences, how do you weaponize your MBA or graduate degree in lieu of some of those harder soft skills that you may be looking for in a particular candidate? And how do you best kind of leverage that to make that pivot more tangible? For an example, talking about M&A earlier, maybe you come from a data background or a research background and you're looking to go more profoundly into investments. How do you use those, and what are the talking points you're looking for in the interview that makes that more of a value add for the candidate?
My answer to that is always, what is the baseline of competency? Right? Adjacent skill set, which a lot of employers still have not figured out, is something to leverage. A lot of times, you use the right term, you apply it. It becomes you of how good you are and being able to They articulate that skill set, that competency. You have to find out what that is. How does that translate? How does that transfer? Does that make sense? It's challenging, and it may take time. It may take practice doing it. That is a challenge because, you know, again, it's not just the organization you're going to go and interview with. The individual in that organization is probably not trained, right? So that's kind of coming back to how you develop your craft and being able to articulate that. So you can't go in there and say, I did this for 3 years. No. How did you adapt to that environment, right? How did you do that? How did you, you know what I mean? How proactive were you? How can you tell that story? How can you demonstrate on a resume that particular competence? That's something you have to do. I'm not the answer for you right here. That's part of the discussion. Does that make sense? I know it can be confusing. It's a new way of looking at it. How do you deliver your skill sets? The challenge becomes, can the employer understand?
That's great. Thank you so much. Anyone else wanted to comment before?
Final thing is like, what level are you willing to do that at, right? So like if you want to make a pivot and you have several years experience, you're probably, you know, reasonably senior in whatever, you know, function that you're in today. And if you're coming into a new function where you don't have any experience, chances are you're not going to get hired at the same level of seniority. So it's a little bit of like, hey, I know I want to do this. Do I want to bet on myself? Am I willing to take like a more junior level position from like a hierarchy standpoint and then sort of rebuild that over time? Because, you know, if you have 15 years of sales experience and you want to go do the like vice president of, you know, mergers and acquisitions job, it's hard to make that transition. So I think it's just a question of where you want to come in at.
Thank you so much. So there were a lot of themes that were covered today. First of all, companies, organizations are hiring. Be confident in your storytelling. What do you bring to the table? What are the skills, both hard skills and soft skills? Definitely networking and being courageous on LinkedIn and in-person events. Also, I would say that I think we kept coming around sort of to the same conclusion that it's okay to reach out to recruiters. And it's good to be persistent, gracefully and professionally persistent, but then also to Candy's point, to do the follow-ups, to thank the recruiters, even if the position didn't work out, maybe you can network and get some feedback from the recruiter on the experience. I look at networking really differently. I look at it as, and I think Martine mentioned it, networking to me is about creating relationships. For Stephanie, for Candy, for Mike, Iris, Hugh, and Martine, I don't want this to be a one-time transaction with me personally as a professional and representing the Georgetown brand and our students. I like to create relationships so that I can also help them if they are in search of a candidate. It's a two-way street. And so I really want to take the time to say thank you to everyone for coming in on a Saturday. For those that were able to come in person, that are local, that you took your time to come in and spend time with the students and share your insights and expertise. And for Candy, I know it's an earlier wake-up call for you out in the West Coast. So we really appreciate you coming, and Stephanie as well. I think for some of the folks that are in the military looking to transition, I would love to work with you on another session just for our population that's in that situation. But thank you so much. And for the students that asked the questions, I'm really happy and pleased and encouraged that everyone contributed and you got what you needed. So thank you so much for your time and your expertise and your insights. We appreciate it. Make an announcement. I think Hong wanted to make an announcement. Sorry, I should have said that at the end.
So Denise came here on a Saturday to provide you with the service, but what you didn't know.
You can Spotify, listen to some of these tracks. I have definitely, I've heard about like 4 or 5 good songs. So I, that part of the mission was actually very yeah, well, I do a lot of networking like they were saying. This is not your person party used to go to because these are your friends. Like everyone's here to meet someone.